Well, first things first, how are you?
Yeah, can't complain.
That's good to hear. So, before we jump into the whole album, the new album Vengeance, and then everything that goes along with it, now, usually I don't like asking bands about their band name, but in this case, I do think it's relevant. So, this concept of 12-foot Ninja was created way before the band was even here. So what inspired that first kind of idea of 12-foot Ninja?
Well, I went to Ripley's Believe It or Not Museum in Far North Queensland, and I saw a life-sized figure of Robert Wadlow. Let me double check. I think he was 8'6". Robert Wadlow. And I read this story, 2.72 meters he was when he died of like a toe infection or something. Centimeters to inches, just for people who, yes, so foot. That's difficult. It's not doing what I wanted to do. Anyway, he was huge. He was a massive dude. And I read this sort of little blurb about how someone tried to pull his leg off because they thought it was a normal sized man on stilts. And he's just kind of, like you would flick a bug away. He's done that and sent this guy like flying through the air. And it kind of was fascinating because I thought, imagine my brain kind of went to the first season of UFC, when they didn't realize that it was Brazilian jiu-jitsu and kickboxing that wins all the matches. And they had sumos and, kung fu dudes all fighting. And I thought, imagine if he was like trained and that size, and then I think my brain went from there to round up to like 10 feet. And then I thought, well, the Hulk's 10 feet. He should be at least 2 feet taller than the Hulk. And then I went 12 feet. And then it's sort of, it's weird. It kind of, I started thinking about it. My wife and I, who was my girlfriend at the time, sort of wrote this novella like of who this character could be. And it's almost like a superhero kind of story. That kind of, I guess, was the precursor to the band, like in around 2006. And then, we always had this plan of telling this story about this character whose name's Kiyoshi. And, he's got the ability to become this giant ninja. So the name 12-foot Ninja, it's not like it's not how he would refer to himself. Like Superman didn't come out going, I'm Superman. Someone else went, you're Superman, and he went, all right. Whereas Batman, he was like, I'm Batman, he figured it out. Yeah. So it's kind of, it's a bit like that. So whether or not he is actually 12 feet tall, he could be taller, he could be slightly shorter. It's kind of an observer's name.
But this, because I find this very interesting, especially because this whole conception came before the band. Because did you always have a very multi-dimensional approach, a multi-platform approach to what you wanted to do?
Yeah, I think, I'd had a band before 12-foot Ninja and we were signed to a major and it all kind of ended horribly. And I was ready to give it all up, like in my early 20s. And I've always written, like in that band, our first album was called The Parallel Development because there was two kind of separate styles. There was this sort of heavy stuff. And then there was all these other, more like Radioheady, Jeff Buckley kind of styles. And, I'd always wanted to write music. I got kind of bored with one style. So I guess the story was a solution to disparate genres because it's sort of like more of a visual thing. So the different genres could lend themselves like a soundtrack to something. So there was always the plan to I guess, explain how this music works by pairing it with storytelling. And storytelling, as soon as you say that, it's like, well, modern storytelling is film, like that's kind of and then I suppose video games have kind of taken over that industry just in terms of how people would consume content. So video games and film kind of feels like the holy trinity with music. There's like, it seems all connected. So that really was the plan. And, it's taken us 14 years or so to finally, put out like an offering that's close to, basically the best we can do without sort of having millions of dollars to make movies and video and AAA games. So, yeah.
But I mean, you do really well. I think your videos that the band creates are very well received. They have a lot of humor in them, and then they add to kind of the whole experience. Is it? And obviously you've brought out comics before, and now you have another comic and a kind of fully fledged novel as well in the Wyvern and the Wolf. But when you start kind of a process like this, do you think, okay, do we need to focus on the music first? Do we focus on the artwork first? How does that go? Because it seems like you have to multitask a lot to do all of that.
I think it's a kind of disorder that I have that drives a lot of the guys crazy is that I have to be working on multiple things at the same time. So I don't really think it happens in a chronological, linear sort of one thing at a time. It's kind of like everything at once, which, I find maybe it's just, me keeping busy to avoid dealing with my own mental problems. It could be that. So, I think I've always tried to just jump into work. I'm a bit of a workaholic. So I just jump into different projects, and I enjoy kind of achieving stuff like, getting through something and seeing it come to fruition. And I sort of relate to Marty McFly from Back to the Future, because if someone tells me I can't do it, that just makes me want to do it 10 times as much. So.
But it has been part of it, doing it on your own terms, I would imagine, because you have been an independent band for a long time, and you pretty much do whatever you want. This is kind of the way it seems from the outside, and you don't see a lot of bands doing that. You don't see a lot of bands incorporating other elements, and so was it always? Well, I don't know if this is a good question, but were you ever worried that it would kind of overshadow the music that you made?
No, I honestly wasn't. I think that's kind of a new thing that's popped into my head, because I've realized that, there's a number of people that, may think 12 Foot Ninja is a funny band. Right. As in that, that we're trying to be like a comedy band or something. When the music and the lyrics and everything has always been very serious, the story components have always been very serious. And I think it's a little like, I understand the clips, what we do with the music videos is kind of a meta response to music videos. Like, because music videos I find are really pretentious, because it's like, you're trying to be this hero or something, like, and you the shit's not even plugged in. Like, it just feels like, it kind of feels like the acting part of a porno or something, like really lame. So I don't know. I mean, some bands do it great, but personally, I've always enjoyed the kind of the clips. Like, I loved a lot of Nirvana clips. Like, I think Lithium was one of the ones that I really liked. I think it was Lithium, where they had a kind of game show, sort of like a variety show, and there, Kurt Cobain's not even playing guitar. Like, he's just, because he's really kind of aware of how weird it is that he's supposed to be pretending to perform. And I mean, Foo Fighters have always done really funny, kind of interesting clips. So yeah, I think the clip thing is that, but I guess it's the only thing that I find a little disappointing is if people hear like Latin American styles and then they think they're funny. Kind of bugs me a little bit because I don't know, we really respect those styles. So it's not, they're not there. They're not a joke. Like, you know,
Sure.
but I wouldn't, it's not something that I'm like precious about. It's just more like, okay, that's interesting that people would hear, you know, genres that they may not listen to, but and assume that they're a joke because they're there, when that's not really our intention. So, I mean, our intention at the end of the day too, like, I guess I can argue with myself over and over again. It doesn't really matter if people enjoy it. So yeah, I guess I'm speaking subjectively and from my own perspective when I say that. It's like, I'd never correct anyone and be like, oh, you're disrespecting bossa nova. How dare you, you know, or something. But yeah, I guess it's been interesting to observe. And you know, I don't blame people. Like we, you know, especially the shit that I do in clips. I'm chopping people's arms off and eating people, and I can see why they'd think it's all pretty weird.
No, but I do think that's an important point to make, that because you are a really good musician. So if we start with the musical base and in terms of Vengeance now, where was that origin? What kind of gave rise to the kind of the album, but also kind of everything that went along with it? Did it coincide, or did you start with the music and then think, hey, because of Corona now maybe we can develop this whole narrative around it? Or
I think, yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think, because we tend to sort of, I think that, you know, I've said this a couple of times now, and I think it's the most appropriate analogy is that if people are like, how do you write songs? I think it's the exact same way that you put a jigsaw puzzle together. You know, how do you put a jigsaw puzzle together? Well, you kind of get one piece and then you get another piece. And if they go together, you'll put them over there and then you start over here. And there's not really a set, you know, like you're trying to form the picture, but how you do it, you know, there's not necessarily a set method. It's just you're trying to just make pieces fit until you've got a full picture. So I think, you know, that's the best way I can describe it. And I guess that the different genres and the, you know, the 80s vibe that's kind of that's come out a lot on this album. Yeah, I mean, I think it's just kind of, you touched on it before when it's like you do whatever we do whatever we want. It's more like we literally, you know, it's literally just following interests. Like for some reason I started getting into that sound and tapping into early, you know, well, probably more mid to late 80s kind of sounds, which I grew up with that stuff. So it wasn't difficult to kind of reconnect with it. So yeah, there's not a lot of, it's not like, well, we could go down this path. We could, you know, in the discussion, it's kind of like we just start. And then I think intuitively we try and avoid doing what we've done before, like too much of it, I guess. There are some things that we kind of keep, like there are some techniques and stuff with production that's kind of become like a little characteristic, I suppose, of the band that we've kept rolling, and we'd never not do it because we've done it before. So yeah, like I said, it's the jigsaw thing. It's like you might get a little vibe over here and then you find a new way to make it. Or yeah, I wish I had a better way to describe it, but it really is a bit of a mystery.
Well, one thing I find interesting then is because I read somewhere that it might have been an interview from years ago, but that you kind of said about the first track as well, it's mostly based on riffs, and then the second album there was more focus on song structure, but also the fact that you were called a genre bending band, you wanted to curtail that a little bit. So, what was the approach then for this third record? Did that play a role at all?
Yeah, I definitely think we focused more on songs, and avoided that riff porn kind of. It's like the dark side of the force. It's really easy if you play in metal or any kind of heavy style to just get fixated on technicality and riffs. And, I've often kind of thought that, if you listen to music through the prism of how difficult it is, you miss out on all this awesome music, because some of the best shit is really simple. And AC/DC, there's
Sure.
that band still kind of stands up, like it's simple, like and I think also we learned a lot. Like we did a arena tour with Disturbed, and we sort of learned like some of our songs kind of got lost, in that environment. Like there was too much technical, like bing bong stuff going on that it didn't really translate like just rocking out kind of more groove orientated stuff that was less frenetic and psycho. So that was an eye opener, because we felt it. Like it was it's the difference between writing in your studio and then actually going and performing in an arena. Like there really is a difference. And I think those bands that get the opportunity to play those size venues, you see how it influences their writing. Like, it's like they know how it's going to land on a mass scale. So I kind of I think I went off on a tangent with your question.
No, but that's all right, because in that sense, with what you just mentioned, has that always been the ambition, kind of trying to ultimately be an arena act in a way?
Well, I mean, I don't know whether it's been like it's necessarily been in the front of our minds to do that, but it kind of feels like, if you're climbing a ladder, like that seems to be the top. So yeah, I mean, it would be fantastic for people to really, to be that big, for it to resonate with that many people would be awesome. And I guess we've got the odds against us being, a fairly niche,
Sure.
a fairly niche band in an already sort of limited sort of genre, or, whatever you want to call it, umbrella. But I mean, I guess my thing is twofold, is that I kind of feel like there's a split personality thing happening, of where I can't write music purely for commercial purposes because I hate it. But so I want to write what interests me, but I also want to reach a lot of people with that. So it's kind of trying to manage those almost contradictory objectives. And I feel like the secret to that is songs. Like it's actually, you can dress up a song in any kind of production, or you can go on a rhythmic tangent, or you can, play with different melodic ideas, but there has to fundamentally be a point to the song, and that lies in the lyric and the melody. Like, and the rest of all the other elements have to support that one kind of point. And I mean, that's not a hard and fast rule, but it is the origin. It's the genesis of music itself. Like music existed to communicate prayer, like psalms and, going all the way back to Gregorian chant and stuff. It had a purpose, it had a function. And then, it wasn't really until, I don't know, I guess maybe the Baroque period when, virtuosity became like top of the priority list. And it was more about like freak show ability. Like you got those soprano vocalists that could do birdsong and just do this amazing stuff with their voice, or like violinists that were just like shredding the shit out of the violin. And, you know, composition changed and song structure. Well, I mean, I guess they weren't really called songs, but, you know, the structure of the compositions were a little bit more abstract, and they weren't as kind of standard as classical. I kind of feel like, you know, we went through a similar period with, like, I guess from bebop onwards. Like, you got Miles Davis, he completely kind of revolutionized how jazz could work. And then fusion came about. And then you got these guitarists like Alan Holdsworth that are like from another planet, that draw hieroglyphics to understand what they're doing. And, you know, so we're kind of just parachuting, like, it's like Fortnite. We're parachuting into an island after a millennia of musical development. And sometimes it can be quite easy to get lost in the swamp of possibility. So I'm trying to, in a way, create simplified boundaries, like drawing the lines to color within. And one of those is like, how does this work on an acoustic guitar? Who's talking? Who are they talking to? Why are they talking? What's the point? You know? And if we can answer all of those questions and feel like it's good, then hopefully it's going to reach people. Whether or not it does is, you know, another thing, because that's the crazy alchemy of music, is you can know the theory and you can know the tools, but that doesn't guarantee you can build something awesome that's going to have an impact. So yeah.
Is that kind of the, how would you call it, the plight of a creative person, that you can be creative all you want, but you have to sell it in a way as well, or you have to kind of like...
Yeah. I mean, look at Yoko Ono.
Fair enough. Well, if you talk about kind of asking questions like, what is the point of this song, and well, why is this? Why are we saying this? Why is this done in a certain way? So thematically, then, how do the themes on the album arise? Is that out of conversations that you have amongst each other? Is that just somebody throwing some lyrics in? How does that work?
Well, I think, you know, Ro and Nick and I tend to have quite long conversations about what's happening in the world, you know, and I'm always kind of, I'm like the guy on the milk crate in the park that's like ranting about something, you know, and like Nick's got a keen interest in world events, and, you know, we all kind of have our different views. And I think there was just a general, like in the Venn diagram of all the things that interest us, we kind of met in the middle on certain topics, you know, and for this album, like a lot of it was sort of, you know, I think there's an ongoing theme probably since Outlier about mortality, you know, like mortality plays a big role in the things that preoccupy us in just, you know, what's the point of what we're doing, and you know, the time scale, like the limit of just a human's life, and meaning and purpose and all that kind of stuff. But also, like, I think the internet is probably a new topic, and then I suppose the normalized narcissism on like certain social media platforms, and the blurred lines between like objective knowledge and relativism, you know, where people really just define their own truth and then they expect everyone else to honor that truth, like to honor their truth because it's just something they've declared, you know. We're definitely sort of finding new ground of, you know, what is real. Like, you know, it's becoming harder to identify. I think words are losing a lot of their semantic definitions. You know, we're in a process of redefining a lot of things. And I find over the last probably 5 years or so, I often, in the middle of a serious conversation with stakes, I will have to just pause the conversation and say, I just want to be clear that my definition of these words is the same as your definition. So we're having to have a kind of thesaurus conversation about like, are we saying the same thing? Like, because, it's hard to know whether, people's interpretations are so varied. So, I mean, I'm getting a little bit kind of verbose here, but I think it's kind of, Instagram, like self-editing people's lives, the way we present kind of, there's this kind of compulsion to present this picture, and it doesn't matter if it's real or not, because if you put it out there, then that becomes more real than whether it is real. Like, those kind of things are sort of interesting. I feel like we're all kind of becoming avatars of ourselves, like in a weird kind of way. So there's a bit of cynicism.
The way you speak about it reminds me, I had to read a book in college by Jean Baudrillard, and he talks about simulation and simulacra, and it's kind of what you talk about, kind of that the fake version becomes more real than the original.
Yes.
So
I don't know. I mean,
time in that sense.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of people, talking about this kind of stuff, and just I think when you collide with it, and you're like, you have to question, did that just happen? And I feel like everyone. Another thing I hear myself saying is I feel like everyone's got an imaginary pocket, and it's full of lines from movies, and they just shuffle them, and they just they can't wait to use them in real life. Like, how dare you? Like, it's like, right. Someone said, I need a bigger boat or whatever, that kind of stuff.
It's performance, like, right?
Yes, it's performance. Like, here's the thing that drives me nuts. When someone, like, there are two people that live together, like a couple, and one will write, babe, I love you more than fucking cheesecake and your eyes sparkle. And they're writing it on social media. It's like, just just tell them they're right there. But what they're doing is kind of it's like, I describe it, it's like they've gone to a restaurant, and they're having a romantic dinner, and they're like, everyone, listen to this, babe, you mean so much to me. It's just so fucking weird. Just keep it. Yeah. Keep it. It's a performance. It's a total performance, and it's painfully obvious, but we just kind of pretend it's not happening. Like, I don't know. We should be calling out that shit. We should be like, what the fuck are you doing? Like,
it's really strange. And then the way it affects us, especially the younger generations, as they grow up with all of this stuff, it's going to be interesting in about 20 years or so to see what kind of effect all of this has on us. Because I think it's now still too early. I mean, we already see increased rates of depression and suicide and all those kind of things. But
I'm very grateful that I didn't have, I grew up in a time where if someone wanted to talk to me, they'd call up my house, and then usually my mum would answer the phone and be like, there's someone on the phone, and it was the phone had a cord connected to it. Like, there wasn't this, you couldn't just reach me at any time with a little beep. I don't know. I guess they always say that the generations rebel against the previous generation. So I mean, maybe, I'm hoping my son's 3. I'm hoping maybe he'll just reject all of that, and people will hang out with each other in real life. And yeah, I mean,
what I'm hoping for, but I'm not sure if that's what it is. But that we're now in the part of an overcorrection, and then that we might get back to a middle a little bit. I hope that's the case, but we'll see.
I agree with you. I agree. I think we have to go crazy to come back to normality. We have to kind of, and I mean, I've seen it. I've seen it happen with a few different things. Like, I mean, I was just saying the other day, I don't like, if someone's gay, nobody, like, I don't know anyone who gives a crap. I think we've kind of evolved. I don't know. I hope I don't offend anyone by saying this, but I don't know anyone that cares if anyone's gay. It's like, that's just a normal thing. It's like, no one would care if their kid's gay. It's not taboo. Like, that means it's all worked. Like, we've kind of got there. So I don't know. I feel like we've progressed a lot but we're still fighting as though we haven't. Like,
yeah, I get what you're saying, because I think and obviously there's a lot of room for more progress. But one thing I do find is that I think people expect progress to happen quicker than it actually does. I mean, it's not just a realization the whole world has from one day to the next. Oh, now we get it. It's something that takes decades, if not millennia, to kind of filter into our collective consciousness. But I do agree that. Well, let me put it differently. I do think people are a little bit too sensitive, and they shouldn't care what other people think as much as they do. Just get on with your life, and then you'll be fine. I guess that's kind of my.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the other thing too is that there's a very small minority that are vocally offended and positioning themselves to represent other people that they haven't consulted.
Sure.
They haven't been appointed as representatives or whatever, because a lot of people, there's bigger things like to worry about. So it's crazy. I kind of hoped aliens would come and just sort it out. But it hasn't happened yet.
There's a famous thing, right? If there is intelligent life form out there, then either they're not impressed by us, or because we are a lot dumber, or if we are smarter, then they will never get here before we get to them. So
yeah, true.
It's a very funny
but
thing.
I mean, the funny idea to play with is that we're in some sort of, the Sims simulation, like, and we're all characters. I think whoever's playing my character has a funny sense of humor. Like some of the situations I find myself in, I'm like, if this is designed, it's funny. Well done. I almost feel like saying, I hope you're enjoying this.
You can imagine somebody watching that, kind of in the class, kind of having a zap through,
having a good laugh. Like the other day, let me tell you a real quick story about my video game that I'm in. I was in the supermarket, and I have this weird thing where if something falls off the shelf, I feel like I should put it back because it's easy, and like just walking past it and it's there, I could just put it on the shelf. So it was like perfect timing that there were people kind of coming from one end of the aisle, and there was this thing that I couldn't really make out. It was like, it looked like some sort of product like on the ground. But by the time I'd picked it up to put it back on the shelf, the people had come towards me, and then I'd looked at the product, and it was like men's diapers, and I felt almost like saying, these aren't mine. This isn't mine. And then I put it on the shelf, and I'm like, no matter what I say in that situation, they're going to be like, yeah, sure, mate. Yeah, whatever. So I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't put things back on the shelf.
No, but that's an interesting thought, because you're the perfect way would be that it wouldn't bother you. Like, okay, I'm just picking this up, but for some reason we're so self-conscious that it's kind of.
Well, exactly. I'm self-conscious when I buy. Like I bought lettuce, dog food, and tequila the other day, and I felt like telling the person, these aren't connected. Like, I'm not going to make dog food Sanchoy bow and like drink tequila. Like, I'm not going to eat that dog food in the lettuce and drink tequila. I just need you to know.
I do eat healthy. When I have a full kind of belt full of kind of crap foods, I do eat healthy at times.
And they're probably not even thinking about it. But I always think that when I buy toilet paper. Like if I buy toilet paper, I usually buy a big thing so I don't have to keep buying toilet paper. I like it, but I almost feel like saying, I don't shit that much. Like I don't need this much toilet paper. This is future proof. Like I'm thinking ahead, but just talking about it is weird. Like people would just be like, dude, don't talk about it.
It's just the thing of when you're camping, right? And you got a roll in your hand, you're walking into the woods.
Yeah, everyone knows.
Yeah, exactly.
And what's weird is everyone shits though,
That's the thing. And there's so many, I mean, we're going off on a tangent a lot, but there's so many kind of weird things that we still hold taboo, or we're weird about when everybody does it. And it's strange. But let's get back to these because I don't want to take up too much of your time. Let's get back to the wolf and the wyvern and the wolf then, because when did you get into contact with Nicholas Snelling?
So I've known Nick. Nick actually was a writer for a music magazine, and he reviewed us a couple of times, and I always thought he had colorful kind of reviews. And he left that job and moved to a magazine, and I was putting together a pitch Bible for the 12-foot ninja. You know what they call a pitch Bible is like an episodic kind of breakdown for a TV show. And I contacted him to help me kind of spruce up the language, because I'd written this sort of novella, like 6 chapters, but I wasn't good at different formats, because I'm not a writer. And he helped me with that. And I took that to LA and met with a couple of companies over there to try and like see about pitching for an animated series. But because it was serious and violent, they were like, we only really do funny, So, I mean, you're probably aware of that if you watch Netflix. Most of the animated stuff that's adult is humorous. Like there's not a lot of serious. Well, actually, that's probably changing now. There's kind of a lot of anime stuff popping up on Netflix. But back then it was kind of limited to quite serious. And anyway, he started writing, and I describe it like the scene in Forrest Gump where he starts running and then he just keeps running. Like Nick started writing and he just kept writing, and he sort of got obsessed with it, and really, I think instead of going like from here to there, he went like a million miles sideways and built this epic world and all of these characters and elaborate kind of connections between the characters, and really made it his own, and now like we've got like this beast of a thing, and it's like 1,000 pages or something. This is one, like there's, I don't know if we've announced it, but there's more.
Okay.
And he did that. And I mean, it was kind of frustrating because we wanted it to come out with Outlier, but he got so engrossed in it that he just had to keep going. So it's taken him about 5 years of like dedicated writing to build this thing. So I think, that's if I was going to be apprehensive or paranoid about anything about this launch, is that people assume it's just kind of shit we just spat out, and don't kind of give it the time that was put into it. So, but then again, once a few people read it, they're going to figure that out. Like, oh, hang on, this is vast. This is, this goes deep.
Final question then, to kind of round off, because you've been very kind with your time. As the person who created this idea of 12-foot ninja and seeing this story develop in all fashions in comic books and now this book, what has that journey for you been like, seeing your creation kind of grow into this 1,000+ page thing?
Yeah, I mean, I can answer that probably multiple different ways, because there's one side of me that's frustrated that it didn't happen quicker. There's one side of me that's really grateful that it's happened. And there's another side of me that's enjoyed the evolution. And, it's like when you do anything difficult, like it's very satisfying to get to the end. And now, after the hard work has been done, we get to kind of experience it through other people, which to me is one of my main drivers as anyone who creates anything. Is I love sort of sitting back and getting to experience it again through other people's perception. That's why this album's been really difficult, because we've been sitting on it for so long. So we did the most psycho thing I think any creative person could do, is spent all this time making this crazy thing, and then we just put it in a vault. That's weird. It's weird to do that. It's like, when you make something, you want to share it. and we just haven't been able to do that because of COVID and, you know, a whole bunch of stuff. So it's definitely changed this experience. But long story short, I think if I was going to make a Voltron out of all of those perspectives and create one thing, I would say it's a relief.
Yeah, because I can imagine, especially if it's been that much of a labor of love. But the final comment then, but this is not the end then, right? Because it'll continue to develop.
Yeah, I mean, like I would love to continue developing it. The only reason it would stop is if just nobody gives a shit. You know, but I'd be surprised if that's the case. But, you know, if it is, I'll take up, you know, I've always wanted to make greeting cards.
There's also always another career you can start.
Another career.
Something to keep your mind busy as you're doing your music. Steve, thank you so much again for your time, and it's been a wonderful conversation.
Thank you, Robin. I appreciate it.